CBS News contributor Bob Schieffer has covered 9 presidents. He joins us at the table now. Bob, good morning.
Good morning.
What the hell is going on?
Yeah, good question.
You know, my Air Force training comes into play here because the Air Force song is "Off We Go into the Wild Blue Yonder." And every time I wake up now, I'm just thinking, here we go again. I mean, I'm not going to say I've never seen anything like this, because every time I say it, the young people around here, it's become a drinking game, you know, that every time I say I've never seen anything like it, here we go. So in the interest of sobriety, I'm not going to use that term today.
Well, it is Friday, and you've covered presidents in White House, and people use salty language. But on the record, and against a chief of staff, and against the president's chief strategist, using words and talking about self-fellatio, it's not like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah, Bob.
You're smiling at the way she expressed it, aren't you?
Yeah. Norah's being very diplomatic, but a sex act on himself. So how number one?
What are we talking about?
How number one, Bob, is
the
that
quote about Steve Bannon?
Well, I know, but I mean,
how is that even physically possible? Number one, and number two, when you hear something like that, Bob, are you offended? Are you offended? Are you disappointed? Are you saddened by it? Because this is really serious stuff. When you listen to it, and the children are listening, and parents are listening, and I think we're the United States of America using that kind of language on the record from a high-ranking White House official.
it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It is just embarrassing.
Yes.
It is embarrassing for the nation, and the idea that someone who represents the President of the United States. I mean, look, my standards are not too high, but I got some.
Yeah.
You know, and that kind of talk, you don't hear that behind the chutes at the Fort Worth Rodeo. You know.
And you've been behind the chutes at the Fort Worth.
Well, I have. I've been a lot of places, Charlie, and it's just. But I tell you, I think that we're going to look back on this week. This might be some kind of a turning point.
How so?
People are
in the
saying it's an
presidency.
inflection point.
I tell you, the way that Jeff Sessions has been treated, it did not go over well with Republicans in the United States Senate. They don't like it. He gave up a Senate seat to go serve the president. That's an honorable thing to do. And hang him out to dry like they've done, I think that's had more of an impression on the senators than any other thing he's done, and that does not help him. He needs those people.
And how about last night? I mean, here you have, in the dead of the night, this Senate vote on health care. You've got Mike Pence, the vice president, standing over John McCain's desk. Trump calls John McCain to try and lobby him, and then John McCain votes no.
By thumbs down.
Yeah.
I tell you, and they've got themselves in a fix now. And you know, my wife, Pat, who is kind of the brains in our family, she came up with a great plan on health care. She said, you know what I think they should do? The women of the Senate, how many of them are there? 13? There's a large group, and they're a very classy group of people.
And
she said they ought to get
in the
together.
Republican Party are the two that are making a difference.
They ought to get together and write a health care plan. And see what the rest of the Senate thinks about it. And my sense is if they tried everything else, why not?
Right.
I think it might be a pretty good idea.
So where is it all going, Bob? I mean, what's the point?
Right.
I think
When will we
if the president
does
does not get his business in order here, I think it's going nowhere. I think his agenda is going to go right out the window. I mean, you can't have, you know, he's got to get together with people in Washington and find some way to work together.
But what do you make of Republicans?
So long.
This is going on. The Russian probe continues under Bob Mueller.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he's got no legislation at all on the horizon.
And you heard what Lindsey Graham said yesterday. He said if he tries to fire Jeff Sessions, he said this may be the beginning of the end of the Trump administration.
He said they will be held to pay. But, Bob, this is what fascinates me. There are so many Republicans who disagree with how the president's behaving, what he's saying, what he's doing, but they are not speaking up. What do you make about that they're not saying, Mr. President, please stop? Mr. Scaramucci, please stop?
They're saying it privately.
Yeah.
And I understand, but that's where it starts.
Okay.
And I think there's something going on there. I think Donald Trump is in worse shape today than he was at the beginning of this week, just from a standpoint of getting his legislation passed,
All right, Bob.
working on his agenda.
Thank you. Always good to have you at the table. And our best to Pat, the brains of your operation over there at that Schieffer household. Thank you.
Something we all knew.
Yes.
No Pat.